I want to give you a scenario here that I think is really hard to imagine that this is happening in the world today, let alone here in America. But it's not just this one story. This is happening all over the country. This one involves a 15-year-old girl who is literally, her parents say, kidnapped from them after they admitted her to the Boston's Children's Hospital when she came down with the flu. The girl had been diagnosed with Mitochondrial Disease, which is a disease of the muscles that makes you really hurt a lot, if I'm not mistaken. The latest is she had this flu. She goes to the doctor, and the doctors say she didn't have that. She has something else, and this is comes from a mental illness. It manifests itself as physical symptoms. It's in your head. Okay. Doctors then tell the couple that you can't take her home. She's got to stay here. When they say, no, we don't think so, we disagree, they are escorted out of the hospital by security. And now they only get to see her once a week for an hour. How loud would you be screaming? Oh, they can't because there's a gag order. The hospital is claiming that the parents over-medicalized their daughter, leading them to take custody of the girl, even though the family has provided proof that every time they've taken her to the hospital or to the doctor, they did exactly what the doctors told them to do. Now the family is in a bitter dispute to get their girl home. It's been 10 months since they lost custody, and another court date looms right in front of us. We have three people I want to introduce you to. First, Beth Maloney. She is a lawyer and an activist. She has had several past run-ins with this particular hospital, but it's not the only hospital. Cristy Balcells is the executive director of MitoAction.org. This is a patient advocacy organization. Bo Berman is the investigative reporter for Fox Connecticut, who broke the story last week. When we carried it on the Blaze, he was the only one that we could find that had covered this story. And Bo, I want to start with you. What exactly have I missed that you think is salient to this? You've met with the parents? Are they sane?
Hey, Glenn, thanks for having me. Yeah, the parents are sane. When you first meet with them, they are a little excitable. They are a little, dare I say, abrasive at times. But the truth is, you got to ask yourself, how could a family not be after what they've been through the past 10 months? Okay, so when they first called you, did you believe this story? You know what? It was tough to believe, but I sort of right away knew that either way, there was probably going to be some sort of story here, because what you had was either a family that was truly over-medicalizing their daughter in the sense that she has had something called a cecostomy tube put into her. That's almost like a fecal catheter, to my understanding. She was on about 7 to 9 types of medication. And so if what the hospital was saying was true, and if the girl's pains were really truly in her head, then perhaps that would be abuse. But when you looked into this more, looked at all the paperwork, they had proof of everything. Yeah, she went to, so early on, it was either this...
The parents had taken her to Tufts, so it's not like they were going to see some witch doctor.
That's right. Yeah, it wasn't some street corner pharmacy here. Right. So it's a pretty reputable hospital, and the bottom line is it figured that to be that either the parents were telling the truth or the hospital or somewhere in between. So I knew this was going to be some sort of story here. Okay, so now they're there for just a short period, and all of a sudden they've lost custody. I mean, how difficult is it to lose your child so quickly? Well, yeah, you know, this is amazing. Everyone I talked to on this story said they've never heard anything like this, quite like this, to this extreme sense in their lives, in their careers. Medical professionals, custody professionals, really. But in the sense, this all happened within 4 days. They got to the hospital, and it's a little foggy or unclear exactly how it transpired. But the way that I can ascertain, you know, in terms of what I've been told as to how this happened was they bring her in. And the parents initially were somewhat receptive to listening to Boston Children's Hospital whenever they said that we're going to start to install a new treatment plan. We believe that some of this might be a different disease. But very quickly things escalated. And when those parents heard that they might lose custody, as you can imagine, they became very upset. Oh my gosh. And it kind of became the perfect storm. Okay, so Beth, yes. You say this isn't all that rare. It's not. It's a pattern at Boston Children's Hospital. Parents bring their children to the hospital seeking treatment, often going there on the advice of physicians, and the hospital
comes to the decision that the diagnosis that the child has had, perhaps for several years, is incorrect. They diagnose the child with something different, and when the parents disagree and want to take the child to a different hospital, the Boston Children's will post guards at the child's door,
Right.
and take the parents out.
Because when you sign in, it says in their patient rights that you have a right to a second opinion, but only if their doctors say. It's like the Hotel California.
Correct.
I mean, I've never seen anything like that.
They say that if they do not feel that your child warrants different treatment, then your child is not entitled to the different treatment.
Okay. So first of all, tell me what the disease was that they thought she had, because that is like a muscle disorder?
So everyone always says mitochondrial disease. I haven't heard of that, but we all have mitochondria. They provide power for all of your body. It's a defect. It's inherited in most cases in how your body converts food to energy. Many people, children and adults, have this disease and are misdiagnosed because the disease is complex. It requires several facets to diagnosis. In this case, this child had the diagnosis from the appropriate manner. She has a family history, she had the appropriate lab tests, and she had the clinical symptoms, all verified, and she'd been treated for the past several years.
And she was getting better.
By a doctor at Tufts.
Okay.
And you know, with mitochondrial disease, one of the hallmark symptoms of this disease is that it's touch and go. If you think about your energy source from your body coming from your mitochondria, if you're sick and you have the flu, are you going out to run? You don't feel well. You feel wiped out. Mitochondrial disease patients feel like that all the time. That's their baseline. So when you talk about this pain and fatigue and headache and mental fogginess and developmental delay and organ symptoms, you think about you've got a low battery on your phone. It's not that one app doesn't work. None of them work because you've got a low battery.
Okay.
So in this case, mitochondrial disease is not something made up. It's a real diagnosis. And in her case, then, to be challenged, for the parents to be challenged, saying that the treatment that they were carrying out, which was prescribed to them by a doctor, not curative, but just supportive, they were told it's life or death to do these types of treatments for your child. Many parents are told that.
Okay, so Bo, let me go back to you, because I heard an update today that she is doing much, much worse now in the hospital. Do you know that, or have you heard that?
I don't know that for certain, but yeah, I have heard that, look, in the story, in our report that we first put out, she's seen ice skating, and that was in December of 2012. And we obtained a video of her from inside the hospital more recently, I believe circa August, and she's now in a wheelchair and appears just visually to be doing worse. And when I talked to the parents before the gag order was put...
Absolutely. If you have a condition, which is then your treatments are removed, you're going to get worse, not better. The disease that was told that she had, somatoform disorder, that was the second diagnosis, is kind of like saying it's all in your head. You're really making it up, and the parents are aggravating that idea that she has something wrong with her. If that were true, do you think that in 10 months they have the appropriate psychiatrists to then help her to do better? Wouldn't there be evidence that now she's doing better? Because for 10 months she hasn't been around her parents, and she should be under this wonderful psychiatric care. And instead, my understanding from talking to our support team within MitoAction and who helps this family is that she's much worse than she was before, that she's unable to stand or walk on her own.
And she's writing letters to her family and smuggling them out in origami, basically saying, don't give up on me, don't leave. If the folks were brainwashing her with all the psychiatrists for 10 months, you'd think they'd be able to stop that one if they were abusing her in some regard.
You know, any parent would say, if your child is sick, who does your child need to be with?
Parents.
Mom and dad.
Yeah.
And let me just say, it's not just mitochondrial children that they go after. I've had 2 children with an autoimmune disorder that affects the brain, and they did the same exact thing and diagnosed the children with somatoform disorder. There is a psychologist at Boston Children's Hospital who is very invested in that somatoform disorder. She's written papers about somatoform disorder, and I know that my information is that she was the same person who informed the family of this child that you're speaking about, that it was somatoform disorder, and also the family involved in one of my cases. And in both situations, the children did not improve, and yet the hospital insists that their treatment is the only treatment that is appropriate for the children.
You know, I feel it's unfortunate that in the wonders of modern medicine that we have today, that doctor-patient relationship no longer has the value that it used to, because I feel like now you belong to an institution.
Yeah, I want to come back and pick it up there, that your children don't belong to you. Your children belong to you as long as a doctor or nurse or the state agrees with you. But the minute they disagree, this isn't somebody who's saying, I'm going to cure my kid's lung cancer with cigarettes. This is somebody saying, no, I don't know. We have doctors over here who say something else. Nobody's crazy in the formula. And the state has come and said, well, too bad. You're not the parent of this child anymore. It's an outrage. Back in just a second. I want to share something with you that I haven't shared before in any detail. But I have a rare case of small fiber neuropathy, which causes excruciating pain in my limbs. It causes phantom pain. Some people will have it with diabetes and everything else. And they don't necessarily, it doesn't always manifest itself the same way. And it can make you feel absolutely nuts. My wife has spent more than one occasion checking my feet or my legs for glass, because I will swear that there are shards of glass in my legs or in my hand, and my arm is on fire or whatever. And it is quite bizarre, but it is real. And now we are starting to take this 15-year-old girl who has a real disease and say that this is a fake disease that she has, and the motivation for the hospital would be, A, as you said, there is somebody vested in this disease, which is the disease that people usually say is, what is it, Munchausen?
Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah, Munchausen by proxy, which is making your kids sick, so you get the accolades.
Correct.
But that's usually the disease that they pinpoint, so that's why they're taking the child, right?
Part of the reason they claim.
Okay. The other reason is what? Is there money being exchanged?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know whether it's a matter of egos, and Boston Children's Hospital believes that it's better able to decide about medicine than any other hospital in the country. I really am at a loss to understand what the motivation would be to take children from parents who are trying incredibly hard to get the right treatment for their child.
Since this case broke, you have been getting a lot of calls and emails.
This is not a new problem. It's just coming to light. Actually, in 2009, one of the doctors who's involved in this case, who's now at Boston Children's Hospital, did a podcast for MitoAction on Munchausen by proxy and how families could help avoid those accusations because it was becoming so common. When this case came public, we've had an overflow of families reaching out to share their story or to ask for help. Not just in Boston, all over the country. The most reputable academic hospitals are the ones that you would never suspect, and yet these are the families that are saying, I go to the most reputable academic hospital with the best treatment options for my child. I trust them. And then because I argued with the nurses, or I argued with a resident who'd never seen my child before, who challenged what we were doing, when I tried to advocate for my child, as I only know how to do as a mother or as a parent, then Child Protective Services was called in and physically removed in many cases from the situation.
Imagine how bad this is. I don't want to get this into politics, but imagine how bad this is going to be when the federal government is also the enforcer of medicine. I mean, this is a nightmare all the way around. Bo, what is next now for the family?
Well, the family, a gag order was put in place on November 7th, and so now they're really not allowed to talk about the case from what I can tell.
Hang
I
on
don't know
just how can they do that? I mean, it is my child, and now telling me that I can't go to people and say, I need help getting my child back is obscene.
It's not, but the child is not yours. The child belongs to the state.
This is,
That's
Yeah,
what-
the child, they don't have
that's
custody anymore.
That's the key piece, right. Child's not in your custody. And there's
But Glenn,
a
what I would say is
Massachusetts
what's
law,
interesting.
I'm sorry,
Go
that
ahead,
says that you cannot
Yeah,
name a child.
Go ahead, Bo.
one thing that's interesting is that I have several sources that tell me that a newspaper had also been working on this story concurrently as we had been working on it and trying to do a broader piece about more than just this girl in question, but other girls like those that Cristy has mentioned, or patients rather, and that newspaper has been working on this story since April, yet the judge only issued this gag order whenever our cameras were outside the court on November 7th. But anyway, to answer your question, the next thing is just the next court date, which is December 5th, and they continue this custody battle. And some people indicate that DCF is trying to keep custody of this girl until she's 18 years old.
Oh
right
my
now
gosh.
she's 15.
Oh my gosh.
I know personally of 2 other families who also are under a gag order from Boston.
So what do they do? What do we as citizens do? How can we possibly help? I mean, are you taking money for their defense? What can people possibly do to help? And B, what do we do as parents? My gosh, I'm going to when I saw the patient bill of rights that you're signing when you come in, and it says that, hey, basically, as long as you agree and play by our rules, you'll get your kid back. Otherwise,
Or maybe
it's our
not.
kid. Maybe not.
Or
It's
maybe
our
not.
kid.
Right.
And of course, you're not reading that because you're terrified that your
Right.
child's sick
Yeah,
there. Otherwise, you
take
wouldn't
care of
be
them.
there,
Right.
right? You
Right.
hurry and sign and pay the bill and get your child to the next place where they can get better. That's what you're thinking about.
I can't believe, we are sitting in a country where the president said doctors are cutting off feet for $30 instead of giving them, insulin. And that's not true, but this is happening. And nobody is talking about it.
That's a great example of words spoken by someone who has no idea what's actually happening in the patient community. I mean, this is just bubbling over because it's a great example of what a mess actually is happening in the institutions. And to the doctors' credit, they're overwhelmed. There are productivity values placed on what they're doing now, and they are overwhelmed. And there's a tag team of care now. So if you're in the hospital for 4 days, you're likely to see 27 different people who each make their own decisions about what's going to happen to your child. There's no continuity at all. So the fact that this happens actually isn't a surprise if you think of it that way.
This happens so quickly. You have not seen 27 doctors at the hospital. In my experience, the decision is pretty much made within 24 hours. They may not act on it, but the records show that they're making that assessment very quickly.
So is there any way to help this family? Anybody have let's just real quick, because I've got 3 minutes. Any way to help this family? Anybody watching, or is there a way to help them? Anybody?
So I think the family needs as much
do have a
support
Facebook
as
page.
possible, and vocalizing and supporting the advocacy efforts of groups like MitoAction to
Okay, and that's
stand behind this family
MitoAction.org.
is important.
Put that down the bottom of the screen. Bo, you were saying?
Yeah, Glenn, I was just saying that the family does have a Facebook page. They've done some local fundraisers here in Connecticut, and they're working, I've heard through other sources, of possibly setting up a PayPal account or something like that to
But in
receive
my
donations. Because you
opinion,
can imagine it's been
publicity.
10 months of visitation.
Publicity's the answer, because they in fact had the doctor from Tufts testify at the trial, and the court still rubber stamped DCF based on Boston Children's Hospital. So
Tufts is not a slouch. It's not like Bob's Hospital.
right.
This particular physician who testified has 30 years of experience with mitochondrial disease patients. He was an attending at Children's Hospital about 20 years ago.
Does the family have to pay for all of this?
Yes, as
the-
far as
Oh
I know.
my gosh.
The legal costs, when this is, again, this family's an example, but I hear horror stories from all over the country. Families second mortgage their homes, wipe out their savings, wipe out their retirement until they have not another dime to spend,
And we talk
just trying
about
to get their children back.
We talk about the evil insurance companies, America. Look at the other side of the coin. Please Facebook this, tweet this story, tell everybody you can. There's got to be some sanity left in America for our children. What do people do when they're going into the hospital? What is the one thing, if you had advice and you'd say, whatever you do, don't do, or do this?
I would go into the hospital only under the orders of a physician who is able to practice at the hospital, who has privileges at that hospital. In these situations, they went to a hospital where their doctor did not have privileges.
Okay.
So they were just out there. And I think you need to explore hospitals. I stood in front of 400 people 2 weeks ago at a conference on PANDAS and PANS, which is the acronym for this autoimmune disorder, and said, please do not take your PANDAS or PANS child to Boston Children's Hospital. Just don't go there.
Amazing. Thank you.
I'd say it's a lot about record keeping also, though. You have to, you are the advocate as the parent now, in a way that you never had to be before.
Thank you so much, and Bo, thank you for doing the reporting on this story. Thanks for keeping it alive, and watch for updates on the Blaze. You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.